Yes, that's right. It's Joe here live for Joyrider TV, back with some more Q&A, this time back in the Joyrider TV headquarters, back on the Greek island of Lefkos, ready to be cooking some goose. Yes, that's right. So I thought I'm just going to blast straight in with the first question. I've got a lot of topics to address today, so it's going to be a little bit more kind of quick fire than usual, because there's a lot of topics that we're going to be looking at. The first question that I've got, I haven't actually got a name on this question, apologies for that, but somebody did ask, what is sending it? I think because on the thumbnail of the Nacra 15 video, I had written, does it send? Okay, so before we can talk about sending, we need to talk about the beans, more so giving it the beans. So giving it the beans, what this means is we're sailing it as hard as we can. We're pulling the ropes tight. We're sheeting the sail in. We're hanging off the side. We've got water in the face, and we're doing everything we can to make that bad boy go faster. Okay, so what about cooking the goose? Cooking the goose is when you've been giving it the beans for a prolonged period of time, perhaps getting a little bit close to some sort of hilarious capsize, because been sending it for a little bit. Oh, used another term. Okay, because we've been going hard for quite some time. So we've given it the beans, we've cooked the goose, then we're going to take it down the mine shaft. Now, in my understanding of the vernacular, take it down the mine shaft, what I am using that for is when it's time. Sorry, I need a little boat. Wind coming straight down. When it's time to turn from the beam reach, this generally in heavy wind. I think if it was light wind, you couldn't really call it, let's take it down the mine shaft. But starting off on the beam reach and then big gust, and you go, it's time to take it down the mine shaft, and you're onto the broad reach, double trapezing, on fire. Yeah, so that is the mine shaft, and that is when you are truly sending it. Yes. So does it send kind of relates to does the boat respond well to be taken down the mine shaft and given the beans and cooking that goose? So there you go. Does it send? Is it fun to take it down the mine shaft and really give it as many beans as you've got in that tin? Yeah, so there we go. If I'm sounding a little bit on the croaky side, that is because I am. Okay, so just going to go straight on to the second question in the preloaded selection before I say hello to everybody who is tuning in. This question comes from Luke Pigotti, or Pigetti, if he's Italian. I'm not sure the nationality. My Hobie 16. Sorry. My Hobie 16 is a candidate for adjustable jib traveler system. Now, when he's talking about this sort of jib traveler system, there's kind of three versions of the jib traveler system that you might have on a 16. And if we just illustrate this half of the front beam, so there's the mast for reference. So the most simple jib system on a 16 would be what you'd find on the model of 16 called the Hobie 16 Club. I think even these days, even the club model gets the adjustable jib traveler, but on a traditional club you'd have a fair lead like this riveted to the front beam, and then onto that would be the block with the cleat. Looks like a little fella, but would be a block with a cleat, and it would be fixed in that position. So not much you can do in terms of traveler style adjustment with that, unless you did do a complete retrofit of a different system. Now, retrofitting that to a different system isn't too bad. That brings us to the next version, which is kind of like the common version that we'd find on older boats, where you've got a track that is kind of riveted. It's like a track that's been added to the beam rather than a track that is integral to the beam. Integral, maybe that's the right word. So that'll be riveted in. There'll be some holes in it. And then you have a little plate that sits on the track with your jib block attached. There's the jib block. And then a plunger. Hope this drawing is making a lot of sense. A plunger with a spring. Now that plunger goes down into the track, locking it in position. And to move the track, you have to lift the plunger up. Then you can slide it to whichever position you like. And then the traveler will then be in that position. Okay. And I would say for people who aren't racing, unless you really want to pimp your boat as much as you possibly can, I would say that that version is kind of, that is all that you actually need. Because if you're, one of the two reasons why you'd adjust the jib traveler track, one of them is if the wind has changed strength. So once the wind is strong, if you're not racing, you're going to have the jib traveler track all the way out all of the time. So if it's trapezing conditions, let's say. So that means that having the kind of modern LE race style, LE race style adjustable jib traveler. So on that one, the jib car is kind of built in. The track is actually recessed into the beam, and then we have like a pulley at that end with a little cleat here. And then if this is our jib car with the cleat and everything, then what we would have is a line coming off that, goes around the pulley through the cleat, so that you can actually change the jib position even from the trapeze as the crew. So that is pretty cool to be able to do that. But is it actually necessary? If you're not racing, I would say probably not really. You can certainly live with having a track with the plunger that you lift and then deploy into the position where you want it. So one reason for moving the track would be wind strength, as I'd said, and the other reason would be point of sail. So if it's windy, it's going to be all the way out anyway. So it would only be if you're going from upwind to downwind in a light wind that you'd need to move it all the way to the outside of the track, which means you've got time. You've got time for you or your crew to move it all the way to the outside. You could even just set the one on the windward side before you jibe, and then that one will be correct. That kind of thing. If you don't want, if you're sailing solo and you don't want to go down to the leeward side of the boat, then that is absolutely fine. So Luke says, do you think this upgrade is worth it? yeah, I think I've addressed that. Or should I wait a season before attempting to upgrade it? Yeah, I would say the number one thing to upgrade on your boat, if you've got perhaps an older boat, which would be perhaps what would that be, like pre 1990, then the first upgrade you should do is upgrade the downhaul system to a 6-to-1 downhaul system. Upgrade the main sheet system so that you've got, it's a 6-to-1 with blocks like this, which will mean changing, because if this is your boom, if you've got an older boat, you might have a main sheet system which has 2 beckets on the boom with blocks coming off both of those, going to a single point on the back beam. And to change to a modern style 6-to-1 is a really good upgrade to do. What you'll have to do if you are going to do that is you'll have to take these beckets off and put one on exactly halfway in between where you then attach the boom to. So those, I'd say, much more worthy upgrades than the Jib Traveller upgrade. But if you have got the fixed jib, then yes, worth upgrading to this track riveted onto the top of the beam, which isn't as hard as you might think. You've just got to get the right bit of track. And for the whole length of the track, you probably need 4 rivets into the beam. And then you obviously need the car to go in there with the little plunger. There we go. Hope that's helpful. All right. So who is in the live chat? First off the start line today is Oliver in Germany. Yeah, it's Cucks Ollie, who actually, I did put a thing on the internet. Can't remember which bit of the internet it was, might have been Instagram, where I invited people to come to Holland to sail with me on the Nacra 500 and 570. Oliver turned up. Yes, he did. All the way from Germany, came quite a long way. And we had some absolute champagne sailing on the Nacra 570. A very good time was had by all. And well done to Oliver for making the journey and having some great sailing there. It was a very good day. All right, we've got Mark and Janet on board in Ohio. Happy spring sailing, everyone. Oh, yes. Spring has definitely almost turned to summer here in Greece. Yeah, the temperature has been warmed up. So you can look forward to some action from Vasiliki Bay very soon on Joyrider TV. Mark says, love the Nacra tour. Very interesting. Yeah, I thought it was when I walked in there and I got I had a guided tour before I made the guided tour video to know what to expect. And my mind was blown like that. Absolutely amazing. All right. So Lee is on board in Clearwater, Florida. Nice to have you with us, Lee, as always. So Lee says, don't take the balls off. I think when Lee says the balls, oh, right, I see. He's talking about the beckets there. I've seen booms break apart right at the balls after they've been removed. I put my 6-to-1 on the forward one. Oh, okay. Yeah. If you wanted to make your boom the same as a modern one, then you see, I would think that definitely taking the back one off would be okay, because if it's behind where the sheeting is coming from, there's very little load on that part of the boom. If you do drill out, if you ever take out any rivets out of a hole, always put a rivet into the hole to close the hole, because that should mean that it maintains the strength. Whenever you're riveting, if you're putting a stainless steel or inox rivet into aluminium, you should always use a barrier paste to stop any chemical reactions occurring. But top tip there from Lee, he's happy using the forward Beckett, so do try that before taking any other action. Oh, and then Lee just adds, but it depends on how much corrosion is underneath the Beckett before you take it off. Yeah, I can imagine if you've got a boat from the 70s, it's been used in salt water all of its life, and you take one of these Becketts off, there's a strong chance that the two pieces of metal have actually corroded together. So yeah, if you take one of those off, then there might not be much boom left underneath. That's a very good point. Thanks for that, Lee. All right. And I have got a preloaded question from Leland Lee coming up very shortly. But before that, I've got a question from Peter in Sweden, who his question is, got a prop for this one, helmet or no helmet? Yeah, this is, what's it called? Oh, Whifflex Pro from Forward WIP, Forward Whip, the supplier of the equipment that I'm using these days. These are also the helmets that they use in the Sail GP, not this exact model, but the same brand. It's very lightweight. And this one, it doesn't actually have any adjustment. It's just got this kind of flex zone technology, or zone flex technology, where it kind of, when you put it on, it stretches outwards and then it kind of clamps onto your head. Very good helmet, extremely lightweight, and you hardly know that you're wearing it. Whereas a more traditional water sports helmet would be like this one, which I used for quite a long time. I'm sure you recall. You can really feel the difference in the weight, but this one's got a more traditional kind of adjustment method with a little like belt on the inside, and equal, I'd say, just as good, but this one a bit heavier. Now, when would you wear a helmet? For me, I wear a helmet quite a lot of the time because it's a really convenient place to put my camera. But if I was not so concerned about having a camera on my head, I would wear a helmet if I thought that there was a good chance of capsizing. So if it was pretty much constant double trapezing amount of wind, or perhaps single trapezing, like even 12 knots of wind with waves, or flat water, 15 knots of wind, then I'd put a helmet on, because there's no point having a helmet if you don't put it on and you capsize and you hit your head on something. Your helmet, when it's sat in your car or in your trailer, is not gonna do any good at all. That sounds pretty obvious, because it is. So I'd say if there's no chance of a capsize, or very little chance of a capsize, then I don't put the helmet on. I'm just gonna illustrate what I feel is one of the biggest and most frequent risks, which would be, so you're sailing along, that's how this all starts, and you get hit by a big gust. You're on the trapeze, quite clearly. You get hit by a big gust, and maybe you weren't ready for the gust. So your way to tackle that gust is to head up into the wind quite aggressively. When you head up like that, the boat suddenly slows down, which means your trapeze artists, let's say there's just one, goes flying forwards And then if the boat then settles again, then the boat stops, they'll stop flying forwards, but as they fly forwards, they'll go like this and then backwards. And this is the big risk, that you go backwards head first into the mast, so you can't see the mast approaching. So like that. So you go, and that is, I'd say, one of the main issues where your head is at risk. There is, of course, risk to your bonds if you capsize and you can't quite work out where you're going to land on the boat. If you don't capsize very often and it's a new experience, then you are going to have that moment of, oh, where do I go? And you've only got a second to work it out. So, yeah, by the way, if in doubt of where to go, if you are able to jump to the back, that is the best place, because that is where there are the least amount of solid parts. Of course, if you're capsizing by sticking the nose in, then you just have to go with it, and chances are you'll land in front of the boat. And like 99 times out of 100, in my experience, you'll land in front of the boat. Yeah, so there you go. Helmet, good idea. All right. So yes, that is what I think on the topic of should you wear a helmet. All right, joining in the live chat. Cheers. We have got Max in Rosenheim, Germany. Sorry, welcome back from Nacra, Holland. Yes, greetings to the Cat Sailor community. Hoping for some double trapezing tomorrow on the Inter 18. Yes, what a great thing to be doing at the weekend. That is living the dream. I hope there's many of you planning to be living the dream this weekend, and I hope the wind blows well for you. Ryan is on board. He'll be living the dream this weekend, I'm sure. He says, good stuff, make the omelette. You can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs, but let's make that omelette without breaking a few heads. I think that's what we're talking about here. Lee says, a helmet has saved me numerous times from lights out, from the boom swinging through a jibe. It will save your life. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, during the jibe, this is where for many, many years, for a long time, until I actually got concussion, and then I realized actually a helmet is a good idea. But for many years, my argument for not wearing a helmet was that when you're going under the boom, if you're wearing a helmet, your head's a bit bigger, so you're more likely to actually get contact between your head and the boom. And like, and if you get used to that contact, like just a light knock, and you're wearing a helmet, you'll think nothing of it. And then that means that perhaps you'll have trained yourself to not worry about a light knock to the head when you're crossing the boat or when you're jibing, which would then mean if you did one time go out without your helmet on, that could be a bad time. But I've realized the error of my thought process from back in the day, which is why now I am wearing a helmet every time I'm out and it's windy. There we go. Yeah, so agreed there, Lee. And okay, so yeah, Lee has preloaded a question about sail care. So on quite a different topic. So yeah, where if you want to do the best for your sails, what is bad for your sails? Number one thing that's bad for your sails is UV sunlight. So first thing you can do to I'm going to write this down, actually it makes it seem more prominent. UV. So the first thing you can do to help prolong the life of your sails, this is what we're naming this now, prolonging the life of your sails is reduce the amount of UV that the sails are exposed to. What does that mean? Don't leave, like if you've finished sailing, you're at the beach, it's a sunny day, don't leave the sails on the boat for longer than you need to. Like if your sails are wet and you're leaving them up because you want them to dry before you drop them, then fair enough. But if your sails are dry, if you want them to last as long as possible, then take the sails down, get them in the bag and put them in the trailer or in the van or whatever you put them in. Of course, it is nice to have your sails up on the boat because it looks nice, but it depends on if you do that every time. If you like sail for 3 hours and then leave your sails up on the boat for 3 hours afterwards, you are it's just going to mean that your sails are going to last that bit less. And if they're colored sails, they're going to fade as well with more UV. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is salt water on the sails. So salt water is going to damage your sails. So we want to if we can, if we've got the facility, or let's say ideal situation, yes, you want to be washing your sails if they have been exposed to salt water. Realistically, if you've been out and it's windy and you haven't capsized, you might think, oh, well, the sail didn't get exposed to salt water, but it which, you know, they're going to put that layer of salt on the sails, and having that layer of salt on the sails, eventually that's going to it's going to speed up the degradation of the cloth and possibly more so the stitching in the sails. So if you've got the facility to wash your sails, then wash your sails. The ideal would be if you're able to wash the sails and then put them somewhere to dry out of direct sunlight. Now, I know that's a bit of a stretch, then that is a good idea. Now, what we actually do at Wild Wind Sailing Holidays, where we've got a lot of boats, and to wash all the sails every day when the boats come in wouldn't be practical, because what we don't want to be doing is putting the sails away wet. So what we actually do is when we rig the boats up in the morning, that is actually when we wash the sails, and that washes the salt off to stop any buildup of salt on the sails. And it also makes them much easier to pull up the mast. So that is what we're doing, because it's on a big scale, like there's 70 boats there, and to wash all the sails at the end of the day and then have to wait for them to dry before you can put them away, that's not going to be a popular choice. So you sometimes do have to compromise on what you're doing to do the best that you can with the situation that you have. Yeah, I've mentioned make sure the sails are dry before you put them in the bag. But if you can, you know, it's not always possible. In the middle of the winter, if you've been out and it's been raining, what you going to do? You've got to put them in the bag wet, haven't you? Next thing you could do is the battens. So what can you do with the battens to help prolong the life of your sails? Is maybe you've gone to the beach for the weekend, and then you know after that weekend you're not going to be sailing again until the next weekend, or perhaps even longer. And if you were going to leave it for that long and you want to do, this is all if you want to do the best that you can for your sails, then you should loosen all of the battens off. So untie them or unwind them if they've got some sort of Allen key adjustment or something. So you're taking all of the tension out of the sailcloth when you're not using it. Also on the same topic is if you look at most sails, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you look at the way the battens are kind of angled up the sail, maybe this is a bit extreme, but you see the top 2 or 3 battens don't really line up so well with the rest of the sail. So again, for the best prolonged life of your sails, you could also take the top 2 or 3 battens out, so that it rolls up nicely without those battens becoming kind of twisted, which is going to happen if every time you go sailing, you're rolling it up with those battens in and just leaving it like that, especially if you're leaving it rolled up in a potentially hot trailer. Then that heat combined with the twisting of it being rolled means those battens are going to end up being kind of like permanently twisted. Yeah. All right. So then the last bit on Lee's question is rolling versus flaking. Rolling. Yeah, because when you roll it, if you do the best, if you did a loose roll, then the sail's going to be happy. Flaking, where you lay it one way and then the other way like that, you're going to have creases that are getting put into the sail. So much better to roll it rather than flake it. And then for storage of your sails, the ideal would be in a fairly cool, dry place. So, you know, to store your sails, if you live somewhere hot, like if you're an Arizona pirate, then and you store your sails in your trailer, that is going to cook your sails, especially, you know, with the woven sailcloth like Dacron, perhaps not quite as bad, but with the laminated sailcloth like a Mylar sail, if you're leaving that in your trailer and it's hot or damp or probably excessively cold or anything other than just right, the glue that glues the sail together is going to start melting when it gets to a certain temperature, which means your sail is going to delaminate and it's not going to last as long. So there we go. Yeah, lot to do there, but I would say the minimum would be to, if you've been sailing saltwater, wash the sails. If you're not going to use the sails for a bit, loosen off the battens. How long does it take to do the battens? Make sure you remember to tie your battens back in before your next sail, of course, because otherwise that might get a little bit emotional when your battens start falling out while you're sailing. Okay, I hope everybody's enjoying this injection of catamaran sailing stuff on a Friday at whatever time it is for you. Anyway, back to the live chat. We've got Repairco LLC on board in North Carolina. I think I'm coming in that general direction at the end of October to the Hilton Head Regatta. Be there or else you're going to miss out on something quite special. He says, been looking for a Hobie cat. All right. I just started sailing a 21-foot swing keel boat. What would you say is the biggest difference between a monohull and catamaran sailing? I would say the biggest difference that is going to really be noticeable initially is your actual sailing position in the boat. If we draw a back end view of a monohull, that's a back end view of a monohull. You're going to be kind of like that sailing position, whereas a catamaran trampoline hull, now, not to take anything away from the comfort of the catamaran, but some people find it quite bad, the position on a catamaran, either for your back or your knees when you're crossing the boat, the knees sometimes find it a bit uncomfortable. And there's no denying that this sailing position in a monohull is much more comfortable. But on a catamaran, you can, of course, have a nice lie down, maybe in the chaise longue kind of position, hand behind the head. Lovely. That's pretty good, actually. Yeah, and you can't do that on a monohull. So that is number one. Number two is on a catamaran, people coming from monohulls onto catamarans, when you get out on a catamaran in or more, you might have this feeling on a keel boat or a dinghy, you let the sail out, the boat stops, unless it's a modern dinghy with a batten mainsail. But on a cat, you let the mainsail out, boat might slow down a bit, but it doesn't feel like it's going to stop. And the reason for that is because it won't. It's just going to keep going. So to stop the boat on a catamaran, you do have to head up into the wind as well as let the sails out. Whereas on a monohull, you can let the sails out. If even on a beam reach, if you let the sails out enough, the boat is going to stop. And then the third thing with cat sailing, much faster, so you need a bit more space. What would be objects in the distance are going to become pretty close up fairly soon when you're sailing a catamaran compared to sailing a monohull. So you need more space. Definitely essential if you're just going out for the first couple of times is to go out somewhere without too much traffic. And let's go for number 4 is just technique is slightly more. It needs to be slightly more refined in certain areas, such as getting the boat going in the first place and tacking. Those are 2 big differences. Thanks very much. All right. What else? Okay. Lovely old job. All right. Tim is on board in the live chat. Okay. And Repair is sailing on Sunday for sure. Great stuff. Tim's been putting the hours in actually on the water, and you saw Tim in the last episode of What Went Wrong, Peter Panning. But he's working through these flight issues, and we're going to get there. All right. So we've got Storen on board, who says that's a proa. Oh, this one. Yeah, possibly not the best drawing that I've done of the season. All right. So Ryan on board, as we know. Sorry, did Nacra ever talk about the chop and the back beam? Just curious. I've crushed some toes ripping into the chop on the back beam on the older Nacra 500. And in fact, that is in the preloaded questions as well from Chris, who says any tips in how to prevent the waves from hitting the back of the trampoline and the back beam. We love the Hobie 16 because of the raised trampoline. Yeah. So that is a very question. How can you avoid this? I think one of the worst boats for it actually is probably the Dart 18, because that sits really pretty low at the back. Now, there's the obvious answer that if it's windy enough that there's waves, then we just need to sail with a bit more of heel on. So if you're not quite getting what we're saying here, so on a boat which doesn't have a raised trampoline, we're looking from behind here, it is possible and quite frequent, in fact, that waves hit the beam. So you'll be sailing along and then you'll just feel this kind of jolt the back of the boat that in turn forces the front of the boat down a little bit. And it's a pretty uncomfortable feeling. And it's not very smooth. You're going along like that. And it's not very smooth, not very comfortable. And the easiest way to overcome this is to sail with the windward hull a little bit more lifted. That is, you know, that is one of the only things you can do. And then the only other thing you can do to stop this back beam getting hit by the waves is steer a little bit for it as well. So if you feel that the back beam is about to get a whack, you know, you need to, it's next level kind of stuff, but just bear off a little bit. That will power you up more, lifting the windward hull and changing the angle of the beam to the wave. And then once you've gone over it, then you can head up again. So you're having to steer a little bit fairly gently, but yeah. So those are the only solutions, as far as I can see, for this slappy back beam kind of thing. And like, yeah, that is all there is. Sorry, there's not more. Okay, let's continue. All right, so back to the preloaded. All right, yeah, so you may have noticed in last week, seems like a lot longer ago than that I was in Holland, but last week, yeah, Ryan says, could you move forward a little? Yeah, if you're not in danger of sticking the nose in, yeah, then it could be a byproduct of your crew weight being too far back, of course. Okay, and just continue with this before I go on. Brian is in the live chat. Hello, Brian. Says on the FX1 with 6 foot waves racing downwind, didn't find it an issue with the back beam, but found I hit the crest of a wave. The amount of boat to me was much shorter than the distance of the bottom of the wave. Was scared to pop the chute. Yeah, I'm not surprised if it's getting that. If it's getting that lively, then it's pretty likely that putting the spinnaker up is going to seem like, if you've, it goes back to the question, when is it too much to put the spinnaker up? If you're sailing downwind and you've already got a lot on, putting the spinnaker up probably isn't the best choice, because you're going to have more on. But if you want to really challenge yourself, then do it. Yeah. So, yeah, tough situation. So when, yeah, difficult to visualize actually, but steering up a little bit. So trying not to go straight with the waves, rather than going straight with the waves, hitting them at a bit of an angle. That is going to help as well. Okay. So we've got Maximiliano on board. Hello, Max. If I could call you Max, hope that's not being over familiar. Why is it on the foiling cats, the helmsman goes with the traveller while the crew goes with the main sheet, both on the trapeze? It's not just the foiling boats, actually. It's also the most performance racing catamarans, like the Formula 18, 16 Tornado boats like that. Then it is common for, in double trapezing conditions, for the crew to take the main sheet. And the reason for it is because the crew is able to play the main sheet much more efficiently with two hands than the helm could possibly do with one hand whilst having to steer at the same time. So that is pretty much the nuts and bolts of why the crew plays the main sheet. There we go. All right, so continuing, yes, as I was saying, last week's Q&A live from Nacra, unfortunately, we had an audio failing towards the second half of the session, which meant I did miss the question from Henry. Henry is a 16-year-old high-performance catamaran sailor from Southwest Australia, and he said, what degree or qualifications do you want to get if you want to work for the Nacra design team or similar? What qualifications do the current design / engineering team have? I got a response from Nacra on this one, and they said this depends on the specific project or requirement, but most members of the R&D team typically hold a degree in engineering or possess extensive experience in design, along with strong structural knowledge. So there we go. But Henry, if you are serious about going for this as a career with the guys at Nacra, I could tell you, having been there for a week, if you are looking to work somewhere in the industry of catamaran sailing, there's such a great bunch of people that I think it would be such a great place to work. They're fun, they're professional, and they're doing an amazing job. So, you know, what more could you want? And everybody is there because they are all part of this belief, this realization that they are kind of pushing the limits of catamaran sailing to the people. Does that sound right? I just made it up, but it sounded good to me. It was true. So if, Henry, you want to get in touch with the guys at Nacra, just let me know, send me an email, and I will put you in touch with the right people over there. There you go. A foot in the door, you might call that. All right. Next question is from Lunra or Lun RYA or Lunria. Okay. Who says, I have a 2021 Nacra 570. Good choice. I've just sailed one. I enjoyed it. It's a blast. Any tuning tips for us? Now, I would say, having sailed the boat, the size of the boat, the way that the rig works and everything, I would pretty much copy the settings from a Formula 18. So when it comes to mast rake, rig tension, pre-bend in the mast, exactly the same as an F18. So you'd want to do is have, of course, the tuning guide will be available online, but guessing, I would say pre-bend on the mast. God, what are the numbers here? God, it's been a while. You'd want something like about 6 centimeters of spreader rake, which means if we look at the mast from the top and we've got the spreaders, and then if we put a straight line like a batten between the spreaders like that, and then we measure the distance between that straight line and the back edge of the mast, that should be about 6 centimeters. If you're a lighter team, you want a bit more. If you're a heavier team, you want a bit less, because the more spreader rake that you have, the more it's going to pre-bend the mast, which is going to help to flatten the mainsail, which is going to help you to depower. It's also going to make it easier to pull the downhaul on harder as well. So once you've got your spreaders set, we then need to tension the diamond wires. So that's if it was on one side, but the diamond wires like this. And then the diamond wires, we are adjusting the tension depending on wind strength. So spreader rake for crew weight, diamond wire tension for wind strength. So if it is a lighter wind, setting the diamond wires to a tension of about 34 on the loose gauge. Haven't got one here. Did have. Haven't not been using it down at the beach. Yeah, 34 as a minimum, and as a maximum for the strongest wind, I would say about 38, maybe 40 at a push, and halfway for halfway. If you just want to set it up and then not have to worry about it, set it with the diamond wires at 36, 37 on the loose gauge, and then that should see you right for most conditions. Then the mast rake, you want to have it quite far back. So I hope everybody's with me on this. I know I'm firing through quite a lot quite quickly today. That's because there is quite a lot to fire through quite quickly. Or actually, a skeg hull doesn't really look like that, but never mind. All right, so the mast rake, which is the angle of the mast in relation to the boat, what we want to do is when we're measuring the mast rake, this is what we need to talk about first. The way that one likes to do it is take the trapeze line with rig tension on, with the mast straight. Take a trapeze line, so it's going down here, and place it so it touches, if we do a close-up there, on the inside of the hull will be what's called our bow tang, where the bridle wires attach, and there'll be a clevis pin or a shackle which is attaching the bridle wires. So we're going to touch the rope on to the center of that clevis pin, and we're going to just mark that by pinching the rope. We'll then take that rope to the back and see where it comes to on the hull with it pulled tight. And ideally it should come about 10 centimeters down the back of the hull, or if you're a heavier team, more towards the corner of the hull there. So if it's going too far down, that means you've got too much mast rake. So then you want to move the forestay down to bring the mast more upright. If it's only coming to here, then your mast is too far upright, and you should lengthen on the adjuster for the forestay so that it comes further back. All right. Are we okay here? Okay. Lee says, don't you do this with the main halyard? No, I've always done it with the trapeze line. Now, why would that be? I think I think as long as you with the same thing every time, but you know, if you're pulling the main halyard tight from the top of the mast, unless you've got a really good like Dyneema main halyard, there's going to be a bit of stretch in that, whereas the trapeze wire is going to not stretch at all. And it's just always been the way. It's the way that someone once showed me, and that is the way that I always do it. So I'm sure it works equally well with the main halyard, but I always do it with the trapeze line. Okay, and get your butt off the back of the boat. Okay, I think Dan is talking about the slapping of the rear beam. Get your butt off the back of the boat. Okay, that is also going to help. So the last bit of tuning in the rig is the actual rig tension. So once you've set the mast rake, the rig tension, which is the amount of tension in the shrouds. So we set the forestay for the mast rake, and then we set the shrouds for the rig tension. This is on crew weight as well. If you're a heavier team, on the loose gauge, sorry, I haven't got one to show you. It wants to be 24, 26 for a medium weight team, medium weight being around 150, 160 kilos combined, and 28 if you are a lightweight team, which would be a team of like under 150 kilos. There you go. All right. But I'm sure they've got a very good tuning guide online. So there we go. All right. And then Oliver in Germany says you have to make the trapeze line longer because otherwise it's not long enough. You're quite right. Yeah, I usually tie an extension piece of rope onto the trapeze line to make it long enough to touch onto this point on the bow. It's true. All right. There is a, I think, pretty quick question in the preloaded. This is from Mark, who I believe he's either maybe in Canada, could be in the USA. All right. Mark says, this is referring to probably when I was sailing with Oliver on the 570. Wow, that spinnaker set and douse was amazingly slick. Ooh la la. Bit of French, maybe Canada. I want one of those mini furlers. Where can I find one? You can find it at Nacra. And in fact, one of the things I learnt when I was there is even if your boat isn't a Nacra, if you want to find parts, you know, the non-specific parts for your boat, which would mean not the rudder castings, although they have got some Prindle rudder stocks in stock, but the general parts like blocks, cleats, all this sort of thing, then Nacra have got a huge stock of all of this sort of stuff. So if you want to find stuff like the furling gear, then yes, you could get it from Nacra, even if you don't sail a Nacra. There you go. All right. So next one in from Repairco LLC. What is the most expensive part of a catamaran to repair or replace? What repairs would make you not buy a certain boat? Yeah, that's a good question, actually. All right, so let's just all right, so let's say that you're looking at buying a used catamaran for about let's say $2,000 US. That is, you know, you can find boats for that sort of price. And one thing that we all learn over the years is there's no such thing as a cheap boat. The less you pay for the boat, the more you're going to have to spend on keeping it going. So in order of how expensive things can turn out to be, I think what would be number one, if possibly, it would be the mainsail. If the mainsail has lost all of its kind of, you know, when sails get old and perhaps they haven't been looked after, and it's kind of like, and you sheet in and the mainsail rips in half because it's no longer strong, because the cloth is what we might call gone. You're basically going to have to replace the mainsail, because if you know, if your sail rips in half here, because the cloth is gone, yeah, you could repair it by getting a patch put over that bit. But what's going to happen next is there's going to be a weak point where the patch has been attached. And that means that the mainsail is then either going to rip in half here or here. So if the mainsail, if the cloth is gone, that was going to be a significant expense. Although you can find good used sails, and you can definitely find good non-original sails, but mainsail would be probably one of the biggest expenses. The next one would be the hulls. If the hulls, when you looking at a boat, are soft, that means if you push on the side of the hull or on the deck and it moves, it shouldn't move. If it moves, it means what's happened is there's delamination inside the hull, which is going to require quite a repair. And if the area where it's soft is quite large, then it might mean a significant repair. So let's put some numbers next to this. Mainsail, it might cost you, let's say at best, 900 bucks. Hull repairs, let's say that might be 800. Now, usually the mast, it'll be pretty obvious if the mast has got a big kink in it. If a mast got a big kink in it, a new mast is expensive. New mast, you're looking at over $1,000. So if it's got a big kink in it, you should either be getting the boat for free, or the rest of it should be immaculate if you're even going to touch it. If the mast is slightly bent, then yes, that can be fixed. So I think I'm not even going to put a mast on the list, but the next thing would be the trampoline. If your trampoline has gone, same way that the mainsail will be gone, if it's just had a whole lifetime of UV exposure, perhaps it's been left with perhaps it's a what you call it, PVC trampoline. It's had a puddle sat on it for over a year and it's just been badly treated. It could be one of the disappointing things with a trampoline that's old, could be that you just stand on the trampoline and your foot goes through it. That needs replacing. You can't repair a trampoline like that. Now, I do know, because I've been using one, that Salt City Sailing make very inexpensive trampolines. In fact, they're only about $300 for a Hobie 16. So that would be the next thing. Yeah, and then the rudder system, it just all needs to be there. And you just have to, with things like that, you just have to start looking secondhand, used stuff if you think it needs replacing. Like if you break a rudder blade by hitting a rock, or if a rudder blade has got a big crack in it, you go out once and it snaps in half, then if you're buying an inexpensive boat, you don't want to be replacing it with a brand new rudder blade, which costs half as much as the boat cost. You want to be looking like the Hobie Cat sail. I think it's called the Hobie Cat Sailors or Sailboats group on Facebook is really good. A really good place for finding stuff. So that would be a really good place to look. Yeah. All right. And then the next big expense, and this is one that you should, I always think you should carry out, is the rigging. And that is the wires that hold the mast up. And to replace the wires that hold the mast up will probably cost you something like, let's say, $250. So those would be the major parts, I would say. There we go. All right, so back to the preloaded questions firing through today. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Of course, at this time in the game, if anybody is finding this information rewarding and you notice there's no adverts on this live Q&A, then you could support Joyrider TV by using one of these super stickers, which is located next to the chat thing. Let's see, can I actually super sticker myself? Let's all right, I'm just gonna see if I could do this live. Yeah, I'll do €2. Yeah, all right, I'm sending myself a €2 super sticker. You can do. I'm gonna buy that. Okay, I've never actually done this. Yeah, I'll pay for that. Okay, all right. Okay, this is a live experiment. But yeah, so I said a couple of weeks ago that okay, transaction declined, you pay yourself. All right. Okay. But I said a couple of weeks ago that if we can start getting a few super stickers going, which is basically a small donation, and then I'll keep the advertising switched off on the live Q&A, because I get annoyed by adverts when I'm watching YouTube videos myself, and I'm not willing to pay the revenue. I already subscribe to Spotify for my music, and don't want to subscribe to any other platforms just to not have adverts. There we go. Thank you. That was my little bit there. All right, so let's see what is next. Okay, sorry, I can't remember who it was who asked this question. It was following a it was for the Nacra Q&A, but I don't think we got round to it. And it was on the topic of those little elevators on the rudder blades. Now, if you haven't seen any of the Nacra videos, this is going to be like, what? Really? If this is the rudder blade, if we're looking from behind at the rudder blade, then on the Nacra 15, and I'm told on the Nacra 16, we've got, I'm going to do it in green, we've got what are called elevators, which are like little wings, kind of like this on the sides of the rudder blade. It's almost like your boat is going towards the kind of foiling technology. So this is looking from the top. And okay, so the answer from Nacra in what is the point of these elevators is they are small stabilizer fins to steady the boat. They reduce rocking as it moves through the waves. So yeah, as you could imagine, having that on your rudder is going to make it a lot less likely for the back of your boat to go up and down in the water. So it is going to make it so much more stable having these little fins on your rudder blade. And it's also going to provide some sort of resistance to pitching, or I like to call the opposite of pitching wheeling. Pitching where the bow goes down, or wheeling where the bow goes up, because that's going to, they're just there providing that sort of support at the back of the boat. So there we go. It's just to make it more stable. Very good. And it all comes from the kind of this modern foiling technology where they're putting these bolt-on foils onto the Nacra 17 rudder blades. So why not do it on the less foily boats, on the non-foiling boats? All right, Stephen at Grapham, hello Stephen, has just said, so the winglets on the rudders are more for sea sailing than on a flat lake. No, I think for everything. I think if they're available, or if they're going to help regardless of where you're sailing, whether it's on the sea or on a lake. I suppose the only time they're not going to help is if you're sailing in very light winds. Then you are going to have an increased amount of drag, perhaps, I would say. That's a bit of a guess. All right. Next, Repair Code. Thank you very much for your knowledge. You are very welcome, sir. Okay. Next in the live chat. All right. And actually, we've been going for an hour and 10 minutes now. So if you could keep any other questions have got to be accompanied by a super sticker, or else they'll be put into next week's Q&A, because at some point I have got to leave. All right. So Max, as I know him now, Maximiliano says, how often do you need to trim the Cunningham whilst sailing upwind? I heard some people do it. Any insight about this? Should it be modified at every gust and lull, for example? That is a fine question. Now, let's assume that we're not talking about a Dart 18. Yay, thank you, Stephen. Stephen is getting the ball rolling with the super sticker. Thanks very much. I now know the process, and it's pretty easy. So, yeah, the downhaul while sailing, if you're sailing a boat which hasn't got a downhaul that is rigged to be played from the trapeze, then no, you just set the downhaul for that amount of wind, and which means for light winds, you want the minimum amount of downhaul. For when you're overpowered and you're flying the hull all the time, you want the maximum amount of downhaul. And we're talking here on the upwind. Okay. So, and then let's say you're racing your Dart 18. You've been sailing upwind and you're thinking, this is getting a bit punchy. We could really do with a bit more downhaul on. Then perhaps the best strategy is when you tack the next time, when the crew is in the middle of the boat, they arc on a load of downhaul as much as possible. And then when you're on the new tack, then you're set up. But if you're sailing a boat which is set up for playing the downhaul while you're on the trapeze, like a Formula 18, then yes, we would play the downhaul as we are going along. So what we want to do is we want to have it optimal at all times. So let's say we're sailing along here and we can see just up ahead, there's a pretty juicy gust coming. So as we go into this gust, we want to be pulling on the downhaul. So what we want to do is be pulling on the downhaul rather than either heading up into the wind to depower or to sheet out to depower. Because by pulling on the downhaul, what it's doing is it's bringing the center of effort in the mainsail down and forwards, which is going to transfer that power into more boat speed. Whereas if we let the mainsail out, we're not really going to gain much speed. If we head up into the wind. Oh, thanks very much to Repairco LLC. Thanks very much to Oliver. Yes, we're really winning now. Yeah, so heading up into the wind, you're going to slow down if you head up a lot. Easing the sail, you're going to stop flying the hull, but pulling the downhaul more, that is what is really going to make the boat go faster. So yes, as we go into the gust, pulling the downhaul on, and then if we're sailing through this gust and we can see that we're about to sail out of the gust into an area of less wind, then what we would do is about there, we'd start easing the downhaul off again so that we're maintaining the power. So we're just trying to keep the power consistent at all times for the differing strengths of wind. There we go. I hope that was the answer. That was the answer. That's right. Yeah, sorry, we're at an hour and 15 minutes now. I'm starting to fade. I think. All right, back to the preloaded. There's still a bit more in here. Can't miss anything. Not this week. So next one is from Nutsy1356. If anyone was asking, he says, "Is the shiny new Harken? What was it called? Oh, thanks very much, Max, for your super sticker. Very kind of you. I hope that downhaul response was good for you. Wonderful, perfect. All right, is what's it called? A Zircon, I think. The Harken 12-to-1 main sheet system. Is it worth that huge amount of euros? Asking for the Nacra F16, which I see in my future. I would say it is that good. Yes, it's that good. It is. If you really want your boat to be everything that it can be, and this is only talking about the boats that require the amount of purchase on the mainsail, like F16, F18 Tornado, then yes, it is worth it. It is that good. But your Nacra F16 will come as standard with a really, really nice Harken 10-to-1 system, which I think when you try that system, you'll be like, actually, this is good. The Harken 10-to-1 system, the standard one, is really, really nice. And the difference with that would be you'll have a slightly thicker main sheet as well. Now, I know we've talked about this in the past, and some people don't agree with the thicker main sheet. I like the thick main sheet because it's something I can get hold of more easily. And it makes it almost as easy with the 10-to-1 with a slightly thicker rope as it is with the 12-to-1 expensive, let's call it, from Harken, which thinner rope does make it a little bit harder to grip in the hand. That is what I think. Okay. All right. We are continuing. I hope everyone's having a lovely time. All right. Last one in the preloaded. This is from the Hertzy. And this is in response to the video about camera mounting. He said, how long does it take you to edit the final video? Yeah, so let's say, for example, you may have seen on Joyrider TV just yesterday, the Nacra Evolution video. I think the total length of that video is 15 minutes. And that was 5 cameras and 2 microphones cut down from, I think the complete length of the video was about an hour. So to get it down to the length of video that I feel is the right length for the viewers, for you guys, which I think is about 15 minutes seems to be the sweet spot. That probably took about, let's say, 4 or 5 hours to edit. So quite a long time for that video, but that was a kind of a more tricky one. An easier video to edit is the videos that I make here in Vasiliki Bay, Lefkas, Greece, where the weather and the conditions make it so easy to make the videos. All I have to do is know what the topic is before I go sailing. And that means that as long as I am mindful about what I'm doing and saying while I'm out sailing, if I can remember that I've said was relevant, then all I really have to do is chop the ends off and then decide on which camera, which view we're looking at as we go through the video. And that means that the editing would then probably only take about 45 minutes, maybe half an hour. So those are the sort of times. And then I'm actually editing an episode right now, not right now, but this afternoon, of Show Us Your Cat. Yes, it's a special one coming from Cat Club Brownisa in Zeeland, Holland. And that is taking a little while, probably about 4.5 hours for the edit on that one. There we go. Cool. Have I finished? Yes, I think I have. All right. So thanks very much, everyone, for those of you who are here at the start, for still being here at the end, then very well done. You've made it. You are going to be sailing faster, louder, and higher than everybody else on the race course. Otherwise, thanks for all of the donations. Very kind. And yes, Show Us Your Cat back from Holland on Sunday, and then more videos coming very soon on Joyrider TV. And there we go. Enjoy your weekend. And remember, the speed stick is waiting for you.